People fire me up. That's what I gotta tell you. You fire me up. You just make me want to go to the Capitol and just take ground every day. I mean, listen, let me tell you something. 2 years ago, actually, I was so glad when Jamie referred to Jim Lembke as the elder statesman, because Jim is a little bit older than me, and I tease him about that. We came into the House together almost 8 years ago, and of course he ascended, or what we might say when we tease each other, descended to the Senate. And so Jim and I have been together for almost 8 years. We've actually been roommates. We've rented little rat hole apartments in Jeff City to share together. You know, I mean, the kind of places that when our wives come to visit us, they don't really want to touch anything in there, you know. And I mean, that's where Jim and I, we are true fiscal conservatives, you know. I mean, the place that we most recently rented was, I mean, we can't even tell you about it. I guarantee it was not up to code. So we could never invite the fire marshal over to our apartment. But listen, folks, I got to tell you, about maybe 2.5 years ago, I had literally, my wife and I, we had been talking about whether or not I was going to continue in politics. And I can tell you about 2.5 years ago, the energy was beginning to wane just a little bit. Because I felt how a lot of you, I bet you there are a lot of you, if you think about it, maybe 5 years ago, how many of you would say, by a raise of hands, how many of you would say 5 years ago, you would sit and listen to the radio or watch the television and want to knock the radio off the counter or kick the television thinking, am I the only one that still thinks the right way? How many of you felt that way 5 years ago? All right, now, take a look around, folks. Take a look around. I don't know how to judge crowds all that accurately. Now, the media would say that there's about 25 of us here tonight, but it looks to me that there's about 1,000 patriots in this facility on a Thursday night in Washington, Missouri. You are not alone. You're not the only one who thinks the way we think. And so listen. After a while, I mean, I gotta tell you, I was getting a little tired. I was getting a little tired of fighting the fight and feeling like that Jim and I, people like Jim and I, the few of us that will go to the Capitol and fight for your constitutional rights, we began to feel, and I bet you Jim would tell you the same, we began to feel a little bit tired. But let me tell you what happened in America. The patriotic uprising began. The patriotic uprising began, and all over this great republic that we call America, we began to see people coming out of their homes, people getting up off of their couches, people engaging in the process and saying, we have had enough and we're going to change this. And I'm going to tell you, you are the ones that give us the energy to go fight that fight every day. We love you. We appreciate you more than you will ever know. Tonight we're here to talk about our 10th Amendment rights. According to the research I've done, which I'm not the big research guy, let me tell you something. Jim and I have been working together on issues at the Missouri Capitol for 8 years now. I will tell you, he is the brains of the operation. I'm the pit bull that goes and charges the hill. You know, I'm like, you know, Jim is the elder statesman. He's smart. He's savvy. He knows exactly what to do. But what he does is he cranks me up. He thinks that I don't know this. He cranks me up and then watches me go charge, you know. I mean, he's with me. He's right there with me, but I think he gets a kick out of watching me do that. He's definitely the brains of our partnership. So he's the guy that would be more likely to have in-depth research, but I'm going to tell you, it's been approximately 150 years since our republic, since the people of America have really challenged the federal government and said, you know what, enough is enough. There is this thing called the 10th Amendment. We know what it is, we know where it is, and we know what it says. It's been about 150 years since America has challenged that effectively. But you know what? That 150-year gap of us forgetting about the 10th Amendment, about the federal government stepping into every area of our life, that 150-year gap is about to end. Let me tell you something that's happened in that 150-year gap. You want a graphic example of what's happened in that 150-year gap of how far the federal government has reached into your homes? The federal government, ladies and gentlemen, I bet you every single one of you that's gathered here, the 25 as the media would say, or the 1,000 plus that we know are here, I bet every one of you flushed the toilet in your home today. And guess what? The federal government told you how much water you could have in your stinking toilet. I didn't mean to say stinking, sorry. Can you imagine what Thomas Jefferson would say if he was somehow risen from the dead and said, guess what, see all these people gathered here? Each one of them has the amount of water in their toilet that the federal government told them they could have. Now Hamilton would be happy about that, but Jefferson would not. So just as Jim told you a few minutes ago, Jim and I, we are going to file mirror clone pieces of legislation, and I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you, the state of Missouri is going to make the national news over the red meat, pit bull, conservative 10th Amendment legislation that we are going to file. It's been 150 years. It's been 150 years since the federal government has been reminded of their position. Let me tell you something that Jim and I have heard over and over. And let me tell you something, what I'm about to tell you, if this does not turn your stomach, if this doesn't make you sick, I don't know what we could say tonight to affect that. Over and over and over, Senator Jim Lembke and Representative Brian Nieves, this is what we've heard over and over from our colleagues in the legislature. When we talk about doing a particular thing, here's what we hear our colleagues say. We can't do that. The federal government won't let us. Let me tell you something, folks. Let me tell you something, folks. Somehow, some way, there are a number of things about the way that this republic is supposed to run that have been turned absolutely upside down backwards, okay? For example, the First Amendment that is clearly intended to protect the church from the state has been perpetrated, or America has been made to believe that somehow there's a separation of church and state. You see, a lie, no matter how ridiculous, a lie that is told over and over and over and over again eventually will be believed. And if you ask the average American today if there's separation of church and state in the Constitution, they will answer you, yes, of course. When in fact there is not. So what's happened is there has become this uncanny ability, as if the ghost of Hamilton is alive and well in America today. There's been this process by which the federal government and those lawyers in black robes that we call the Supreme Court have completely turned around the original intent of some of our founding documents. The